let me guess. You probably somewhere sick to your stomach because you dropped Desmond Bane. Don't get me wrong. I know you're probably a super savvy fantasy basketball manager and you didn't make that critical mistake. But you know somebody that did. Maybe you're even the person who grabbed Desmond Bane off of the waiver wire. There's so many questions swirling around in my head around this topic. In this episode, we're going to go over the top waiver wire targets in the fantasy basketball industry. We're also going to talk about the schedule for week 21. And last but not least, we're also going to talk about Desmond Bane. We believe every NBA fan that plays fantasy football should also play fantasy basketball. I actually want to start with Desmond Bane. I want to jump in to the Desmond Bane train, right? And just dig in. But before we do that, I want to talk about BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become a part of the team. And remember to use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. So, this season, the Memphis Grizzlies have used 41 starting lineups. Like Glenn Rice jersey number, 41 starting lineups. Let that sink in. That's a lot of moving and grooving. That's a lot of, gumbo in a pot, a lot of different ingredients, mixing it up and just testing stuff. As you know, Ja Morant is out for the season. Marcus Smart has been out for most of the season. And your man Desmond Bane has been out 4 months, like literally off the grid. But he just came back this past Saturday. And fantasy managers who held on to him and who were patient, stuck him in the IR. Some of you were out there with a couple guys in your IR, and you kind of had to just ride with a player like Desmond Bane on your roster, in your lineup, right? Where you can't even use him. You don't even have an IR spot, but you knew that the value in keeping him was so high if the gamble paid off. And some would argue that it did because he's playing, right? But let's dig a little deeper. Let's think about it like this. We have players like Luke Kennard, Gigi Jackson, Santi Aldama, Jaren Jackson Jr. in the mix playing well together with Desmond Bane. But the question that I'm asking myself, and I want to ask you, do you think that the Grizzlies are going to give Bane the kind of burn, the kind of run, the kind of minutes that are going to equate to you winning your fantasy championship? Especially if like this week, everyone is streaming, right? Every team can pretty much stream in the fantasy playoffs. But come next week, things are going to look a little different. And you might have to make tough decisions. So what I'm thinking to myself is the Memphis Grizzlies don't have any serious incentive to play Bane, right? And honestly, for me, if I was a general manager or if I was a coach thinking about next season, I wouldn't take the risk of putting him on the floor to suffer another injury. So you got to think to yourself, with Bane, if you waited this long, you have to fire him up, right? I'm not saying that you don't fire him up, but here's the big takeaway when we talk about Bane. Don't be afraid to drop if your back is against the wall. If you're in the fantasy basketball playoffs, all of the rules of the regular season are off the table, yo. I don't give a shit Sue Puppy. If you are on the Sunday night of your week 1 matchup, down by 25 to 50 points, 100 points, whatever it is, and Desmond Bane is not playing, he is a droppable asset, especially because we don't even know if the games that he's scheduled to play, he will even suit up. So, the big takeaway is don't be afraid to drop Desmond Bane. You'll save yourself a little pain. Bars all day, every day, and tomorrow. So, let's get into this. Here are your top 10 waiver wire targets for week 21 of the fantasy basketball season. First up is someone we've talked about on the show before, and I am super high on. I remain high on. And since the injury to Alperen Şengün, it has just been a love affair, like for the ages. I have to admit, I'm talking about none other than OTE's own Amin Thompson. Over the last 7 days, Amin Thompson is averaging 24.3 minutes per game, which is up about 4 minutes on his season average, averaging 14.3 points per game in the last 7 days, 7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, but check this out. This is where it gets good. 1.3 steals per game. Listen, if you are in a dynasty format and Amin Thompson somehow landed on your roster and you are entering into the playoffs and you have to make those tough decisions, am I going to drop these guys and try to pursue this championship? He's the kind of player that you might want to hold on to. I have him in a couple of spots, and man, I might even be okay with taking the L. If it means holding on to him, I might have to. We don't know how good he'll be, but this is one thing I would say. For this year's fantasy basketball playoffs, he is a viable asset. So if he works for your streaming plan, then play Amin Thompson. I'm going to cough really quick, guys. Hold on a second. I'm about to cough. Hold on. Let me get a sip of this water. Before we move on, let's talk about the top 10 players in points leagues. We have Joel Embiid, who's injured, Luka, Nikola Jokic, Giannis, SGA. Number 6 is Anthony Davis. Number 7 is Sabonis. Number 8, Wemby for points leagues. That's crazy. Number 9, LeBron James. And number 10, Kevin Durant. Those are taken from #basketball. Those are the most updated points leagues rankings. And if you're watching, you can see a ticker here at the bottom. You guys can check that out. Let me know in the comments if you like me sharing the rankings week to week verbally, because we've been doing it on the screen here, but I haven't really asked for any feedback. Let me know what you think about that. So our next waiver wire target is somebody. This is not a sexy name by any stretch of the imagination. This is not something that I have been checking for or wanted to check for, but I have to speak about it because we are in fantasy basketball playoff time, but also we're approaching the silly season where all kinds of crazy stuff happens. So here's one of those things. I'm going to talk about my man from the Toronto Raptors, Jontay Porter. Jontay Porter over the last 7 days has increased his minutes per game by 10. He went from averaging 13.6 minutes per game to 23.3 minutes per game over the last 7 days. He's also doubled his scoring output from 4.5 to 8 points per game. He's increased his rebounds from 3 to 4 over the last 7 days. And this is great. Over the last 7 days, he's averaging 5 assists a game. That's a big deal, especially for a big man. Also, this is where it gets good. You know I love defensive stats. If you're in a category league, come on, man. Come on, man. You know how hard it is to grab these daggone defensive stats. And even in the points leagues, we know that the defensive stats are heavily weighted. Come on, man. Here we go. Over the last 7 days, your man is averaging 1.7 steals per game. Let that sink in. Oh, come here. But there's more. Your man is averaging, guess how many blocks a game he's averaging over the last 7 days? 2 blocks per game. Cooking with hot bacon grease. Is Jontay Porter a sexy name? Absolutely not. And listen, I always say this. There are no bad NBA players. There are no bad NBA players. If you out there thinking there's a bad NBA player, you are sadly mistaken. There's only about 450 guys in the world who can even get that job to play in that league. So Jontay Porter is one of the top 450 players on the planet. But in fantasy, not somebody I'm checking for. So when I say somebody stinking up the joint, it's not saying they're a bad basketball player. It's saying that they stinking up the joint for fantasy basketball. Jontay Porter, he is not stinking up the joint. It is honestly the opposite. It is sweet potpourri. You ever go to one of those daggone restaurants that they got their bathroom game on Smash? Like you go to wash your hands and you like, man, it's so nice in here. I might just have to drop a deuce on the strength. You ain't even gotta go. That's Jontay Porter. Sweet potpourri. Sweet potpourri. Next up, we got more. I told you I got 10 for you. This is somebody we talked about, but we got to talk about him again. Kind of works in tandem with Amen Thompson. Honestly, one of the most stable waiver wire ads that you can probably make this week. I'm talking about from the Houston Rockets, Jock Landale. Jock Landale over the last 7 days doubled his minutes. 21.8 minutes per game over the last 7 days versus his 10-minute per game average. Of course, that has a lot to do with the Alperen Sengun injury. We get it, but it's worth noting that the man is getting that playing time. Excuse me. Over the last 7 days, 9.8 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, about a half a steal, and 0.8 blocks. One thing I want to say about Jock Landale. Jock Landale is sturdy and stable. I don't know if you guys see the kids, they do the sturdy dance. Hey, sturdy, all of that. Your man is sturdy. Sturdy like Brock Purdy. Stable like Clark Gable? Listen, let me stop with the bars. So listen. In the 16 games that he's played at least 22 minutes. In the 16 games that he's played at least 22 minutes, he's averaging 13, 7.2, 2.3 assists, about a half a steal, and 0.7 blocks. So that's 13 points and 7.2 rebounds when he plays 22 minutes. As stable as Clark Gable. I'm saying, though, Clark Gable is probably questionable. That was a different era in time, and people had certain opinions about marginalized groups, so I'm going to just stay away from that. But when it comes to Jock Landale, I'm saying if you want some old faithful consistency, he might be the player to look for. Amen is more of a firework, like an explosion waiting to happen. And that's kind of, how I feel about that Houston situation. Next up, we got more. I told you, I'm cooking with hot grease today. I am cooking with hot grease today. This is somebody we talked about on the channel earlier on in the year, and this was before he landed in his new threads and at his new location with his new team. Somebody that will definitely be able to contribute down the stretch. I'm talking about from the Detroit Pistons, Simone Fontecchio. Man, that sounds good. Simone Fontecchio. Mm, 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 mm. Listen, let me talk about this young man. So, since joining the Pistons, he's averaging 15 points a game, 4 rebounds a game, 1.9 assists, and check this out. If you're in a category league and you need to execute in the 3-point category, he's averaging 2.6 3-pointers per game as a Piston. Come on, man. And I'm not done. His percentages from the field, he's shooting 47.5. And from the charity stripe, he is shooting 87%. Over the last 7 days, he's averaging 17.7 points per game. Yes. 6 rebounds a game. Yes. 1 assist. Heck to the no. And 1 steal per game. Simone Fontecchio is silly season gold. And honestly, the Pistons' whole season has been silly season. It's just like they play anybody, everybody do anything, anything goes to everybody. It's just a hot bag of bat poop. It's not good. It doesn't smell nice. It doesn't look nice. But one thing I would say, in fantasy, we will take advantage of these opportunities where people who don't typically lead off the box scores with phenomenal glowing stats kind of shine later on when people are testing things out. And Monty Williams right now is like he's like Dr. Frankenstein out in these fantasy basketball streets. He's grabbing every arm and leg and eyeball and just trying to put together a monster. And Simone Fontecchio might be the brains. I'm just saying. We got more. I keep telling y'all, this is serious, man. We got people in the chat. What it do? Let me just take a quick second to see who we got over here and give some shout outs. We got my man. Oh, we got It's VX Real in the bill. Oh, shoot. If you guys are watching live, please drop a comment. Let me know where you're checking in from. And we're going to just get back to this top 10 waiver wire list. So, next up, we got somebody who we've talked about on the channel before, but right now this is a critical time. There's some injuries that have happened on his team, specifically to Benedict Mathurin, and it's opening up some opportunity for a few Pacers players that we'll talk about. But we'll start with someone that I really, really like for fantasy in general, Aaron Nesmith. So Aaron Nesmith is someone that has been on your roster probably at some point this season, right? If you like me, you had him and you dropped him. But we in the fantasy playoffs, and that's the routine. Add, drop, right? That's what we're doing here. We're pushing through to make sure that we're streaming our way to a championship. Over the last 7 days, Aaron Nesmith is averaging 31.5 minutes per game. You know what I say about opportunity. That's a big deal. 15 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 1.5 assists. Check this out. 1 steal per game. Yes, and there's more. Over the last 7 days, your man is averaging 1.5 blocks per game. Get yourself some Aaron Nesmith. There is more. I'm still out here cooking with hot grease, y'all. We not playing no games. Next up is a player that I don't even believe I'm putting on this list. But if you don't know, every week I take hours of my personal time to dedicate to you for you to win a fantasy basketball championship. That's all I'm about here, is serving you. We get joy out of this game that we love. It's a silly game if you think about all of the stuff that's happening in the world. Like there are wars right now active. There's a lot happening across the globe. But if we could have a place where we can put our personal drama to the side, family drama to the side, work drama to the side, and just kind of connect on this, this playing field of happiness, joy, fun, talk a little bit of smack with your boys. like, or your girls, right? That's what this is about. With that being said, this player for offense is hot dog water to the second degree. Cold hot dog water. Dumpster juice. Not good at all. At all. For fantasy. Like I said earlier, one of the best players on the planet. You can't get in the league unless you're good. But for fantasy, he has been literally a rotten egg. Humpty Dumpty's bizarro brother. Like, no, this is not good, right? But I'm talking about him. I'm talking about him because he has a unique skill set. Like Liam Neeson from Daggone Taken, right? Like a real unique skill set. And that skill set, we talked about it a little bit tonight, is defense. Oh, baby. We about to get into it. The next player we're going to talk about is Matisse Thybulle. Like Matisse, I've followed him over the years when he was in Philly, all of that good stuff. Again, not the best offensive player. Like, that's not what he's here for. So, like, you got to get that out your head if you're going to stream him. If you are in a category league and you're struggling with steals, this is the kind of player that could take you to the next level. So let's talk about it. One could argue that for fantasy, Thybulle, if he gets the minutes, can be a game changer, right? Recently, over his last 15 games, he's getting about 26 minutes per night. On the season, he's averaging 23, but that little increase can change things. He's averaging 2.6 steals per game in that same time period over the last 15 games. And what gets me is that if, he gets 2 or 3 steals a game, if you're in a category league, by the end of the week, you could have racked up 10 or 12 steals from one waiver wire acquisition. Over the last 7 days, he's averaging 25 minutes a game, 6 points, 3.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1.7 steals, and 1.7 blocks. He is only rostered in 3% of ESPN leagues. Come on, man. We got to really, really think about this. I'm recommending that, especially if you're trying to get you some steals, to pick up Matisse Thybulle. We cooking, y'all. Oh, this guy right here. Man, this is somebody I picked up in a bunch of spots. And they have an amazing schedule this week. They have an amazing, amazing schedule. I'm talking about from the Miami Heat, Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson is only rostered in 15.5% of ESPN leagues. Over the last 7 days, he's averaging 32.7 minutes per game, which is up from his 28.4 in the season. 14.3 points per game. 3.3 rebounds, 3 assists. Ooh, this is good. 1.3 steals per game, y'all. Come on. Listen, he's playing 4 games this week, y'all. The Heat players are an asset, but Duncan Robinson, if you are struggling with threes, definitely someone you want to take a look at. Definitely someone you want to take a peek at. Next up, another player from the Indiana Pacers. I mentioned the injury to Benedict Mathurin that has impacted the Indiana Pacers. We talked about Aaron Nesmith a little earlier, but there's another guy who just won't go away. Like, he's like, and this is no disrespect to him, but it's like, he's like the cucaracha, the cockroach of fantasy basketball. No matter what happens, he always ends up becoming relevant. And most importantly, he becomes relevant at a critical time. And he's a player that's like, it's like Kirk Heinrich and Mark Price had a baby, y'all. Somebody that I love. I have him in a dynasty league, and I just hold him on a strength because I know it might not be this week, it might not be next week, but there's going to be one week where he bring some value. I'm talking about none other than your friend and mine, TJ McConnell. Ooh, like I said, we've said that name so many times this season. It never fails like clockwork. So again, Ben Mathurin is out with a shoulder injury, and it's creating opportunity for these guys. One thing that's worth noting, in just 18 minutes per game this season, McConnell has averaged 9.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. And I'll add in 1.1 steals. And he's also shooting 55% from the field. Over the last 7 days, though, 21 points per game. 21 minutes per game. My apologies. 21 minutes per game, 13.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.8 steals. The steals are not a fluke. It's not a fluke. So if, in fact, you need assists, you need steals, if you're in a points league and you just need solid production, TJ McConnell is a fine selection from the waiver wire. Next up, man, this top 10 is fire. I must admit, I'm really excited about this. I don't have all of these guys on my team. I might be streaming some of them this week. The next guy is someone I was not so sure about putting him on my top 10 list. And when I say my top 10 list, these are not the top rated in any order. These are just 10 names that keep popping up. I do extensive research for this so you don't have to. That's reading articles, whether it's on CBS, whether it's on ESPN, NBC, RotoWire, the works, watching videos on YouTube to gather this information and also putting in my own personal opinions and ideas on it. This guy, somebody that I didn't expect to make this list, but he's on here, so let's talk about it. I'm talking about Nickeil Alexander-Walker from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Over the last 7 days, he is averaging a whopping 31.3 minutes per game. This is good. Over the same 7 days, he's averaging 17 points per game, up from 7.7 on the season. That's crazy, y'all. 5 rebounds, yes. 2.7 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks, non-factor. The points are what I'm talking about. Your man is cooking, yo. On the 12th of March against the Clippers, he dropped 28 points. I'm just saying, he's the type of player, if you need points or you're in a points league, this is the kind of player for those streaming nights, those moments. He's somebody you can slide into your lineup. And you know when I bring it. Like, I'm not playing no games. Like, when I bring it. Big shout out to everyone who's pulling up live. It's V, Rexel, Avery, I see you, Nonsense, Jamal, that lost guy, all of that, right? So I got to give a shout out to anyone who pulled up. But this is the top 10 waiver wire targets for week 21. You know we had to come with a bang, and I'm bringing back your man's in them, not my man. It's your man's in them. Grady Dick. We got Scotty Barnes out, Jakob Poeltl out, Chris Boucher out, all injured. Like, Toronto got nothing to play for, man. Like, literally nothing. Drake is like at home like, well, people just don't drop on me, right? It's not a good look for the Raptors. But with that said, they're going to test out some of these young guys. And one of them who's getting some run is Grady Dick. Over the last 7 days, this is startling, glaring numbers. Listen to this. He's averaging 18.3 minutes per game on a season. But over the last 7 days, come here. Listen to this. 30.3 minutes per game. Grady Dick is now averaging 30 minutes a game, y'all. I'm not done. 11 points a game over the last 7 days. 11 points per game over the last 7 days. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, which are all questionable. But check this out. 1 steal a game, which is admirable, right? We love to see that from a guard. So for Grady Dick, this is not somebody that you are going to, grab and hold, right? This is somebody that you might want to ride Dick to the next round of your playoffs, right? You might want to be mindful of how he operates on the floor, because one thing that's worth noting is when Dick penetrates, he really opens up the floor. Guys are open on the corners and the edges, right? And if Dick gets solid minutes, he could be a problem, right? He could be a huge problem. So grab Dick as a streamer, especially in deep, deep leagues. Next up, I always do a little bonus round, right? So in this research, I'm like, I got a bunch of players that we're not going to talk about. We're not going to go through every single player because it's tons. And this week, especially if you're in the playoffs, you got to be merciless. You got to be cutthroat. Drop and add these players as needed. So I'm going to go through some names. This is the lightning round, and just some guys that you need to pay attention to. So first up, John Conchar. Santi Aldama. Rashawn Holmes. Taylor Hendricks. Intriguing. Bryce Sensabaugh. Maybe. George Niang. Yes. Karis LeVert. Yes. Harrison Barnes. Surprisingly, yes. Andrew Wiggins. Maybe. Bruce Brown. Maybe. Cam Johnson. I don't know. Trey Murphy. Must add, must roster, grab him now. Denny Avdia, same thing. Trey Mann, they got 2 games this week. Droppable. Grayson Allen, oh yes. Keontae George, must add, must roster player, especially for this week. Herb Jones, yes. Vasily Micic, I love him, but only 2 games this week. Questionable. Asar Thompson, yes. Gary Trent Jr., yes. And Bones Highland. So I want to take a minute, y'all, to talk about one of our community members. I just want to give a big shout out to my man Anthony, a.k.a. Ant Tech, who has recently taken on the role of being our first ever BLEAV in Fantasy Basketball expert in our Discord. He has his name is in red with a red badge. And honestly, this season, he has been amazing, providing value in our group, answering as many questions as possible. To be honest, I started a new job. I got my 2 kids, my wife. I work really hard to provide value to you guys, but I can't do it all. And to have community members like Ant to jump in to support me, but also to support you, to help guide you towards your fantasy basketball championship is just an honor to have him. So we're going to send him out some swag as a token of our appreciation. And for you at home, I want to let you know that we have some new merch in. This is our Fantasy Sicko t-shirt. It says, for my people who are listening, it says Fantasy Sicko on it. And it spells out the pronunciation and also gives the definition, which is abnormally engrossed or obsessed fantasy sports participant. Fantasy Sicko. And you could grab that from our store. All you have to do is visit BLEAVeinfantasy.com, and there's a link there where you can check that out. But again, I want to give a big shout out to my man Antech. Thank you so much for everything you do for our community. Next thing I want to quickly rant about is Isaiah Thomas. So Isaiah Thomas, if you guys didn't know, man, he just got a 10-day contract with the Phoenix Suns. Now, this is not a fantasy relevant kind of situation, you know what I'm saying? But what is worth noting is that the Boston Celtics did your man dirty, filthy. Like, under the the pillow couches, the couches pillows, right? The pillows on the couch with the daggone pennies and the nickels, like that kind of dirty. They did him dirty. Under your refrigerator dirty. Y'all don't clean under your refrigerator like that. If you do, you probably OCD, which is okay. Dirty like under your stove dirty. Let that sink in. That's how dirty the Boston Celtics did your man. He was a MVP candidate, and now he's fighting for a job. So for me, like, my faith is important in my life. I'm sending a big prayer out to Isaiah Thomas. I hope they give him some kind of a contract, because your man, he been through so much, yo. He lost his little sister. He went to play injured for a franchise that just duped him and played him. And now he's trying to fight his way back. So these last couple years, so just join me in sending some positive vibes. It's not a religious thing. This is a sports thing, y'all. This is a fantasy community thing. Just send some positive vibes to IT that he can do well in Phoenix and hopefully just secure a couple, like a multi-year contract, man. Get that man 2 years, $5 million a year. He was a former MVP candidate. Let's do that. So send those vibes to IT. Now I got something really important to talk about. Like, this is it. This is it. To win in fantasy basketball, you have to be a two-way player. And what do I mean? You got to play offense and you got to play defense. What do I mean when I talk about offense? For offense, you need to be active on our YouTube channel, specifically by subscribing, commenting, asking questions, answering questions, liking the videos. It just would mean a lot to me, but also it's the way that we support each other, right? Now, the other way, or the other thing you need to do is play defense, right? So you can play offense, but you got to play defense. And defense is listening to our audio podcast, whether you are on your way to work, whether you are at the gym, whether you are washing the dishes. It's a great opportunity to listen to the content so you can win your matchup this week. Now, if you already play offense, but you don't play defense, please start playing defense and vice versa. Now, if you don't listen to podcasts, this is a great time to start. A great time to start. Now I want to just jump into the week 21 schedule. Let's jump on in. So for week 21 of the fantasy basketball playoffs, for most of you, just about everybody's in the fantasy playoffs unless you go right to the end. For Monday, we have 8 games. Tuesday, we have 5 games. Wednesday, we have 8 games. Thursday, we have 7. Friday, we have 8 games. Saturday, we have 8 games. And on Sunday, we have 6 games. So the teams that are playing 4 games, we have Boston, Cleveland, Detroit, Golden State, Indiana, Miami, Minnesota, the Pelicans, the Sixers, the Trailblazers, Sacramento Kings, and the Utah Jazz. Teams playing 3 games. We have the Hawks, Nets, Bulls, Nuggets, Rockets, Clippers, Lakers, Grizzlies, Bucks, Knicks, Thunder, Magic, Suns, Spurs, Raptors, and the Wizards. And we have a couple of teams playing 2 games. We have Charlotte and Dallas. Next up, let's talk about our back-to-backs. On Monday and Tuesday, Minnesota is the only team with a back-to-back. For Tuesday and Wednesday, there are no back-to-backs. The Wednesday and Thursday back-to-back, this is very important, guys. Write this down. Milwaukee, Phoenix, Sacramento, and Utah. Milwaukee, Phoenix, Sacramento, and Utah all have back-to-backs on Wednesday and Thursday. The Thursday and Friday back-to-back, we have the Pelicans. The Friday and Saturday back-to-back, again, very important. Write this down. Boston, Portland, the Spurs, Toronto. Boston, Portland, The Spurs, Toronto all have back-to-backs. And on Saturday, we do not have any back-to-backs. Let's talk about the best schedule. So for week 21, you can stream every day. Every single day you can stream. So these 4-game teams are more valuable than most weeks. We're talking about Boston, Cleveland, Detroit, the Warriors, Pacers, Heat, Timberwolves, Pelicans, Sixers, Trailblazers, Kings, and the Jazz. Remember, you can stream every single night. So next up, I want to get into my favorite part of the show is when we answer questions from you, the community. We have a few questions from our Discord. I'm also going to take some questions from the people who showed up to our live stream tonight. So if you're watching live right now, please drop your questions. I will try to answer as many as possible. So let's go ahead and jump on into that. So first up, let's take a look at our Discord. So for the Discord, here's the first question. Let me stroll here. All right, so this one is from Christner. He says, my playoffs just starts tomorrow. Do you think I should keep Mobley? This is a great question. So for me personally, where I am with Mobley is if in fact, Mobley is taking up space on your roster, right? So if you have an IR spot that's available for him and you can put him in the IR, that's fine. But if he's on your roster and like he's taking up space, listen, man, you got to do what you got to do. Now, I can't imagine another player. I don't imagine another player that's on your roster that would be more valuable than Mobley. But if he's banged up and you don't have an IR spot, you got to do what you got to do. And I just want to pull up real quick to see if I can get if there's any news on him. It looks like he said he was spotted without his walking boot on Monday. So that's good news, right? So he might come back, but like chances are it's slim. So again, if you don't have an IR spot, I'm fine with moving on from Mobley. Next up, this one is from Zynax. He says, what do you think has been both the biggest surprise and biggest bust so far for this fantasy season? Oh, man, I wish I would have prepared for this one because that's really good. That's a great question, honestly. That's a really good question. I wish I would have prepared for that one. But I can answer off the top of the dome. I be dropping freestyles. Come on, man. You know how we do. So I think the biggest surprise for me would probably be a couple of players. The first one, Wemby. Like, I knew Wemby would be good, but I did not expect him to be this good. Like, he's a top 10 player. Like, he will go in the first round of drafts next year for sure. Another surprise was Maxey. I didn't expect Maxey to have the season that he's had. And also Scotty Barnes. I was on the record. I have a video that's not going to age well before the season where I was saying stay away from Scotty Barnes, focus on OG Anunoby. Boy, I got it wrong there. I would say Scotty Barnes was a huge surprise for me as well. In terms of busts, Mikal Bridges comes to mind. Like, that's heartbreaking. A lot of people drafted him in the second round, man. Like, that sucks. That stinks. That's like gym sock stinks. Like, not a good look. And another bust, maybe it's a lower scale bust. I think for me, I was way higher on Walker Kessler. I thought that he would do a lot more than he did. So that's somebody that I was way higher on. So that I think the biggest one though for me, like, is probably Mikal Bridges. I really was disappointed. And Josh Giddey also comes to mind. So let's take a couple more from the Discord. Next up, we got Lost with the Most. says, I dropped Vince Williams for Fontecchio in points leagues. Good play. We just talked about Fontecchio, so I think that was a good move. I love that. I love that. Next one is Hydro PR says, who should I drop, Mikhail Olenek or Poole? They both have, I think all of those teams play about the same amount of games this week. The name that jumps out to me is Olenek. Like, I like him a lot, but also I know Poole has been warming up a little bit, and I really am okay with Mikhail at this point. So now let's go ahead and just pull up to our live stream and see if we can answer a few questions there before we get out of here. Make a couple quick adjustments. Boom, boom, boom. And let's dig in. All right. So this one is from Seb. Seb says Micic, or Sohan. Two of the most interesting names in fantasy. This week, I'll probably go Sohan just because Micic has 2 games. So for that reason, I would take your man Sohan. Next up is from Brian Looper. He says, would you rather keep Isaiah Hartenstein or Paul Reed this week? I got to get Jalen Johnson off my IL. That's good. I would probably keep Paul Reed. I'll probably keep Paul Reed there. But that's a really good question. Next one. Folks are answering each other's questions, which is great. There's a lot of comments. Well, this is a really interesting comment. This one is from Jamal. Jamal says, yo, you got to have Tyler Hendricks on here. 15-10 with a triple one in 33 minutes in his last game. I am all about Taylor Hendricks. And honestly, Jamal, who I told you, Jamal, I'm going to name my next child after you, even if it's a girl, because he was our first ever super tip or super thanks supporter. I did mention your man Taylor Hendricks in the bonus section. So I agree with you. I definitely think he's somebody we got to keep an eye on. So let's see. Do we have any more for ya? Let me see if I can grab one more. Oh, I love this one. This is from Avery. Avery says, TJ, one of my favorite Pacers as a Pacers fan. Listen, I'm telling you, he won't go away, y'all. People be out here talking about TJ thinking that he gonna go away. He ain't going nowhere no time soon. So, want to make sure you get as much value from this channel as possible, especially in the playoffs. So do me a big favor. If you have a question for your team about the playoffs, even if you're in a dynasty league, whatever it is, drop your questions in the comment section of the YouTube version of this episode. I promise I will answer every single comment. Very important. If you have more than one question, just start a new thread. But I can't wait to see your questions, and I'm looking forward to answering them and help you win your fantasy basketball championship. This episode was presented to you by BetOnline.